you have a certain amount of money available in the European Stability Mechanism. Actually, I just saw behind me quite a nice picture, actually, showing and proving that you have real muscles actually to help. But nevertheless, is this picture here true? Are you not underfinanced yourself?
No, I think it's a nice cartoon. Cartoons are always a bit funny, but they make also a point. The point is that the EFSF and now the ESM have been very successful in the market. We have raised during the last 2.5 years about 140 billion euros, starting from zero, very successfully. And we have issued short-term bills, 3 months, 6 months, and bonds starting from 1 year to 25 years. So the full yield curve exists for the EFSF. This has worked very successfully. We need to do this, unlike the IMF, for instance. The IMF gets refinancing directly from central banks. We have to go to the markets first in order to be able to provide loans to the countries that need financial assistance. Overall, EFSF and ESM together have a lending capacity of 700 billion euro. 200 billion is the EFSF, 500 billion ESM. Out of the 500 billion coming from the ESM, only 50 billion has been committed to Spain and Cyprus. That means 90% of the ESM lending capacity is uncommitted, unused, available in case of need. And I think that's also reassuring for markets that a lot of firepower is left.
A lot of firepower left, but enough to take in Italy, just the worst case scenario happens, or France in case there's a real problem occurring, which I don't believe, but just in case. Are you really able to bail out and to help with your firepower big, huge countries having huge structural problems, such as Italy or maybe France?
Well, these are very different cases. They have not had any need for financial assistance from us. But the firepower is indeed enough also to finance a large country if there was a need. France is a really completely different story. France is rated AA+. It's one of the guarantors of our financial stability together with Germany. So I think that's really not an issue. But other cases, if they come up, which I don't predict at the moment, we would have enough firepower.
There was this in Italy occurring. Actually, I recently heard a high-level banker from Italy saying that there's a real risk that Italy needs a bailout in 6-month term in case that interest rates are not kept low. Do you see this risk? Is there some kind of turmoil coming up in the next month?
Well, at the moment, interest rates are also for Italy reasonably low, at around 4.5% for 10-year government bonds.
Today?
Today. We have seen many predictions from people over the last 2.5 years. Many have predicted the end of the euro repeatedly. Journalists, analysts, luckily not everybody who paints such a horror scenario has been right. Most have been wrong. And we see successes in our member states. The adjustment programs are working in Ireland, Portugal and Greece. There's good progress. They are reducing their fiscal deficits. They are improving their competitiveness. So we see success stories, and therefore these isolated voices that always paint a horror scenario have been proven wrong again and again.
So Ireland, you're mentioning Ireland. Is this really a success story? I mean, the end of the year, the program runs out. Ireland aims to come back on the market. Do you think there's a kind of follow-up program necessary for Ireland?
Well, Ireland first is a real success story. Interest rates, one way to look at this, are below 4% for the 10-year government bonds. Below 4%, that's a real success, because they were above 10% 2 years ago. And Ireland has already been able to go back to the market issuing 10-year government bonds. That was not possible for 2 years. It was possible the last few weeks. So they are regaining market access. They have improved their competitiveness. They're reducing their fiscal deficit. In that sense, that they are able to return to the market, it's clearly a success story. However, one has to admit very clearly also that for the population, it's hardship, and they don't see the end of this hardship yet. But unfortunately, the labor market always improves late, even if the early indicators like competitiveness, current account, export performance, fiscal consolidation makes progress. The population doesn't see this immediately, so they don't believe yet that this is a success story.
And actually there's some idea debated inside the Irish government. They would like to get some kind of retroactive recapitalization of their banks.
I know that's under discussion in Ireland when the Eurogroup decided to create next year the new instrument for the ESM of direct bank recapitalization, not going via the government, but directly to the banks. It was also agreed that in exceptional circumstances, on a case-by-case basis, retroactivity might be possible. Whether this is used in any particular case, I cannot say at the moment. That will be a political decision, and certainly not this year, only in about a year's time.
Okay, fine. Let's pin it down. Ireland, success story. Let's move to Portugal. There's some heat coming up in the political and through the political system in the financial system. Have a look on the interest rates just shooting up. Actually, we have this huge rise of interest rates in Portugal during last weeks, and there's still some systemic risk and instability in Portugal. Nevertheless, the Portuguese government followed by the letter every single recommendation given by you and the Troika. So what's going wrong?
Well, Portugal is making good progress with looking at the early indicators, competitiveness, export performance. The current account deficit has disappeared in Portugal also. At the same time, it's painful for the population. GDP is dropping, so real economic activity is falling, unemployment keeps rising. This leads to political instability, and when 2 ministers of the government resigned, there was a political crisis. But I think now Portugal is back on a good way. The coalition has agreed to stay together. The president of Portugal has agreed to the amended cabinet list of the old coalition government. And my expectation is that this government will stay in power for the next 2 years. The next regular elections are in 2015, and that they will continue to implement the program because it is in the interest of the country, although it's very painful at the moment for the population.
Spain, are you in discussion with Spanish authorities about a standby credit line, which would open actually for Spain the door that the European Central Bank could buy Spanish bonds one time?
The Spanish authorities has not made a request like that. We are in a program with Spain. We have dispersed 41 billion euro for the Spanish banking system. That money went late last year, early this year. It's dispersed. From everything I know, and this has been confirmed by the Spanish authorities, they will not request more money for the Spanish banks, and I've not seen any indication that they want another kind of program. I don't think it's needed. The Spanish government has access to the markets. They also issued 10-year government bonds recently. They have always been in the markets the last few years. They are not under a overall macroeconomic adjustment program. We just did the bank restructuring, so it's quite a separate case, not as serious as Greece, Portugal, or Ireland.